Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath, senior editor at Forbes. Elon Musk is promoting Tesla's full self-driving software, and his $1 trillion pay package depends on people buying the service. Yet in an exclusive new test, Forbes has uncovered that this FSD technology ignored standard street signs, including a flashing bus sign. Joining us now is my colleague, senior editor Alan Ownsman, who was the editor who tested this self-driving software. Alan, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Maggie. Good to be with you.
So you bravely got, I say bravely because I have not driven in any autonomous vehicle, or rather ridden as a passenger, but you got inside a self-driving Tesla for a test. How did it go?
Well, to call it self-driving, that's the problem. Self-driving implies full autonomy, that the vehicle can do all driving functions on its own. That was not the case here. This was a test that was provided with the Dawn Project, which is a program that's trying to raise awareness about some of the shortcomings of Tesla's technology. This occurred this month, where we began about a 90-minute assessment in suburban Los Angeles, basically, and in and around some LA neighborhoods. You plug in your address where you want to go into the system, and the vehicle will just take off. So it does feel like an autonomous vehicle at first. Tesla now brands the system full self-driving, parentheses, supervised. That's a very recent change. So since 2020, when they began offering this, they just called it full self-driving. They've run into some problems because of that name. The state of California, the DMV there, is trying to force them to stop using both FSD and Autopilot as commercial product names because they're deceptive. They had a major legal loss in the state of Florida involving a crash using its automated software there that cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars. There's a class action lawsuit by Tesla customers also related to this. So as a result, they have recently changed the name to full self-driving supervised. Again, put in the address, the car takes off. It seems like it's going to be fine. The screen does say this handles most driving functions with minimal input from the human. I did not find that to be the case. Within the first 2 minutes of our drive, we were going, and again, this is occurring in light traffic, clear, sunny day, beautiful weather, beautiful Southern California weather. We went up to a street where construction was going on. Two very clearly marked signs said, road construction, do not enter, one way. There's a stoplight before these signs, so you need to take a left to avoid going down that particular street. The vehicle did a left turn, begins to execute a left, and halfway through the turn decides it's going to go down the street with the signs that say do not enter. So in this case, a human had to intervene to stop it, disengage the system, and get back on track. Shortly thereafter, we're driving down behind a shopping mall. There is a pedestrian crossing, very clearly marked. Painted striped lines and a yellow pedestrian sign with a light flashing. Two people are standing at the corner. A human driver, by law, needs to stop when the light is flashing and allow people to cross. The Tesla did not even slow. And it's not clear that it even acknowledged on the display that it saw the people. That is a fundamental problem. This happened repeatedly. There was a dead end sign, it went down a dead end and ignored the sign that said this is a dead end, and the system had to turn around and come back out. It did a whole series of unexpected and sort of odd things where it would just change lanes for no particular reason and then change back again. There's no traffic, there was no reason, there's no turn coming up. None of these things really make sense. When we were on the highway, it was a crowded highway, decided to get off on an off-ramp. And again, the system is still operating in FSD supervised mode. As we're going down the off-ramp, it accelerates even though there's a lot of traffic ahead and a red light at the bottom of the ramp. Why is the system accelerating? I couldn't tell you. There are incidents where it doesn't slow down for speed bumps, where it doesn't observe the posted speed limit. So if in a residential area, if it says 25 miles per hour, it was doing 30. If it says 35 miles per hour, it was doing 40 or 45. You as the driver will be ticketed for this if you allow the system to do this. So even to say that it is full self-driving supervised seems wildly optimistic. It is not peaceful. It's not calm. It was a little bit stressful. So you are constantly monitoring the system. So one then wonders, how is this like, what is the upside to this? This is not less work than simply driving myself. So it remains, 5 years on the market at this point, surprisingly glitchy. Certainly other people will post videos and show flawless execution, and I don't doubt that those are accurate, that sometimes it's just fine. I was kind of shocked that just within 90 minutes there were at least a dozen very specific things that it failed to do, observe, or see properly. And a lot of that just seems very basic. Like how is this not, the engineers working on this, how are they not programming in sign recognition?
Or speed bump. Is any of this an improvement over the last time you were in a self-driving Tesla?
The general feel is often better. It feels more sophisticated at times. It'll be a little more aggressive in terms of how it behaves. So it is somewhat misleading because it feels like it's a step up from what it had been in past iterations. The problem is that creates perhaps false confidence for the human driver to say, oh, the system's okay. Not the case at all. And something interesting that just happened last week that I referenced in the piece, there were two Tesla influencers who love the tech. They have big followings on YouTube for their channel. They wanted to replicate or create a cross-country drive, coast to coast, using FSD, supervised, the same version that we tested, where they would not intervene. They started in San Diego. They wanted to go to, I think they were headed for New York, the full route. They got about 60 miles, and the Tesla ran over a large piece of metal in the middle of the road. Again, ideal road conditions, not heavy traffic, clear skies. There were no issues that would have obscured this object. The vehicle just didn't bother and drove right over it, did severe damage to the underbody of the vehicle. So their test of trying to drive cross-country with this technology ended in about 60 miles, short of the 3,000 to go cross-country.
Probably good it didn't get to the GW Bridge, but did Tesla have a response to either those influencers or your inquiries?
They did not. The company is very silent. Elon speaks on X, and that's about it. There is no response to this. I did reach out a couple times, heard nothing back. They've not commented either on that incident. And the company itself posts videos on its own YouTube channel that just show flawless performance. And again, I believe at times it can be fine. You might use it and it might be just great. And then another time unexplained things happen. So that's the real issue with this. And that made me wonder, and I keep asking this, so why is this legal? Should this be legal? Tesla charges $8,000 to add FSD supervised currently. And then there's a $99 a month subscription fee. What are you getting for that? I'm not sure.
There's a question of legality. There's also the question of, is that good business? Will anyone buy that?
People clearly buy it, but there are some owners who really stand by it, think it's great technology. Others that I've spoken with, some Tesla investors, in fact, who never turn it on. They know what it is, that it's not reliable. They don't use it. So this is the whole thing. We mentioned earlier that it's key to Elon Musk's pay package. Tesla's board has determined that he should receive the equivalent of $1 trillion in Tesla stock if he meets a whole series of new targets, performance targets that are set over the next 10 years. One of those is getting 10 million FSD, active FSD subscriptions. So that's, it's in his interest that people buy this. Right. It's in his specific financial interest. We don't know exactly, because the company doesn't disclose this, how many people use it now.
I was just about to ask how many people. How much progress has he made on that 10 million?
It's hard to say. The take rate was probably higher early on, like in the first few years. It has developed a very dodgy reputation because of these things. And Forbes is hardly the only organization to find issues with this.
Well, and you quote an auto reviewer at Edmunds,
Yeah.
and there was something interesting here, and I'm going to read the quote. It's about when you as a human take over the steering wheel when it's on self-driving, and he says it's made worse because FSD doesn't like you taking control to make corrections, turning the steering wheel just a bit too much to avoid an object in the road, and the entire system abruptly turns off. What was your experience with the human intervention overriding FSD?
It happened about 10 times in the course of 90 minutes. And those incidents, one was the experience mentioned initially when the vehicle was about to go down a do not enter street, ignored that sign and the one-way sign. The other one happened when we were on the 5 freeway in Los Angeles, and the vehicle was trying to merge to the right, to go to the right lane, at the exact same time that another vehicle was trying to enter the same lane on our right-hand side. So the two vehicles would have collided, it seemed. The Tesla did not seem to notice the other vehicle doing the exact same thing at the same time. So in that case, we had to intervene to turn the system off to avoid what we thought could have been potentially a crash. Another occurrence happened when it seemed that it was going to, we were at a full stop in the Silver Lake neighborhood of LA, that district where there's a big reservoir, very busy traffic. It looked like it was going to pull and turn to the right in front of an oncoming car in a way that felt very, very unsafe, too abrupt. That would have been, perhaps surprising to the oncoming driver who might not have anticipated that. We disengaged again at that time. We did not trust the system to safely do that. The Edmunds comment, it pointed out the system does not avoid objects in the road. That was exactly what happened with the two reviewers who were trying to do the cross-country drive. Exactly as Edmund mentioned, it doesn't, debris, a busted tire, a dead animal, whatever you see in the middle of the road, it doesn't dodge it. Now, sometimes that just might be a paper bag. It might be something harmless. In this case, with the guys in San Diego, it was a heavy metal object that did serious damage to a brand new Tesla.
Well, and that's why I was asking if the company responded, because that almost sounds like a malfunctioning sensor on the bottom of the vehicle, because you had the issue with speed bumps. So that to me indicates that there's some sort of issue at the very bottom.
There is one fundamental flaw. I think many experts would say this is a serious flaw with the Tesla system, which is there are no underbody sensors. All it has is cameras. It has a series of 5-megapixel cameras around the vehicle. Compare that to a Waymo. The Waymo has far higher resolution cameras. The Tesla FSD system uses a 5-megapixel camera. That's not as much as what's on your iPhone right now. Waymo has something like 30 or 40 megapixel resolution images. It may even be higher than that. It's also got LiDAR. It has sonar and radar. It has all of these sensors, so it sees the world in 3 dimensions and it detects hard objects. Radar would have been a great addition in the case of the guys who hit the piece of metal, because that's what radar does. It hits hard things and tells you, hard object, please avoid. LiDAR tells you dimension. They even use thermal cameras on the Waymo and Zoox robotaxis that can sense heat. So you could see an object like an animal in the road that's laying there. If you have a thermal camera, you may know if it's even dead or alive, because it'll be a heat image, right? So Tesla has none of that. It has just these very simple cameras. So the issue is that safe enough as a sensor system that you're seeing the world just with cameras? Elon Musk says repeatedly, humans have a brain and 2 eyes and we get around just fine. Well, the human brain is a pretty remarkable thing, and humans are actually surprisingly good at drivers for all of our faults. And human eyes are also quite excellent, but it's that combination of a unique human brain and eyes that seem to work a lot better than the onboard computer in the Tesla and its cameras in terms of seeing things.
I imagine the LiDAR technology adds an expense to these vehicles.
It does.
So is it fair to perhaps speculate that Tesla's trying to avoid that expense?
Oh, Elon Musk has been very clear about that. And that's why his argument is ultimately Tesla will win in self-driving and autonomous driving because of the cost advantage. The problem is, if you are, and it will be very interesting over time, the liability issues that surround this, because if there is, and then there have been at least 59 known fatalities involving autopilot and FSD. I think of that total, of the 59 total fatalities reported, 2 of them involved, FSD was active when they occurred. In a legal case, the simplest argument from the plaintiff would simply be to say, your system, what is your sensor system? Oh, well, we only have cameras. Okay. Every other company developing autonomous vehicles is using LiDAR and radar and all of these other sensors because they believe it's absolutely necessary to have all of that additional information to see the world properly. So is it correct that you chose not to add these additional sensors? You made the call and decided to go with the lower cost system because clearly they have. For the moment, they can do this because there are no specific laws that say you must have this technology and this technology and this technology. Currently in the United States, the only federal requirement has to do for a system like full self-driving FSD, you have to have a driver alert system, something that's monitoring you that tells the system you're not really paying attention. So you need to stay attentive. And this has sort of been kind of a loophole for the moment, that's the only real regulation.
I was going to ask, in the case of a crash of a self-driving vehicle or an FSD Tesla or a Waymo, does the liability change depending on which vehicle you're on? If you're
Yes.
in a Waymo, is the liability on the company? And if you're in a Tesla, is the liability on you?
That is correct. That's right. Waymo operates what's called a level 4 autonomous vehicle. And level 4, this is, a term within the industry, but basically that means that's a full autonomous vehicle. So I'm in LA, you can hail a Waymo. On my way here today, I saw a few Waymos hiding in a parking garage here in Jersey City, and they're coming to New York. They're testing now. The service is not available yet for commercially available. It will be very soon. You get in that Waymo, no one's sitting in the front seat, you tell it where to go, all the liability rests with Waymo in that case, unless of course someone else hits you and but
Right.
but in the case of the Tesla, that's a very murky area because Tesla's running its robotaxi pilot in Austin, Texas with a modified version of FSD, but they have a human safety driver in the front seat. And the reason they're doing that is probably because the system is not quite ready to be trusted on its own. If there were an accident in that case, I don't know yet what the specific liability would be, but my suspicion is it'll lie with Tesla because they're advertising it or telling people this is an autonomous vehicle. So you have basically FSD supervised and unsupervised. What they're doing in Austin, I guess, is unsupervised. What they sell to customers currently is supervised. But when the software is ready in a future update, it won't be called supervised anymore. At that point, then the liability will fall to them because they are saying the car is fine, the car can handle it. If that's their claim, that's their responsibility.
I'm beginning to understand why your experience felt more stressful than driving. But you mentioned laws regulating this space. Are there any proposed pieces of legislation on the table that could better regulate this subsector?
Not yet. But this is a long issue. For the piece, I talked to a former NHTSA regulator, Mark Rosekind. The first major Tesla fatality involving automated driving systems with its autopilot system, which is a simpler version of what, it was the precursor to FSD. That occurred in 2016 when Rosekind was running NHTSA. That was the very first one. There were really no guidelines at that time at all. This was all very new. So ultimately, Tesla was not found to be at fault with that initial fatal case where the driver was using autopilot. The system failed to see a truck that was crossing its path on a highway in Florida, smashed right into it. But he wasn't paying attention. The driver wasn't paying attention, and so that was found to be not the responsibility of the company. Since that time, though, we've had there's been a lot of data coming out, and so many reports, and unfortunately more deaths have occurred as a result of this. So it certainly would seem to be time for NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, to set some guidelines. But NHTSA is more of a reactive agency. They don't set rules in advance of something. So basically, once they've determined there is a safety issue, then they will act. And there are incidents where they have done this in some specific cases. They have not done it in the case of Tesla. There is an investigation by NHTSA right now involving Tesla and FSD, and it has to do with how quickly the company is reporting accidents. And there are legal requirements for an automaker, how soon you have to report when your cars crash to NHTSA. And so they are reviewing FSD at this time. They would not comment to me, and they don't, publicly about what they're planning to do in terms of any specific new requirements. But it is within their authority to, if they reach such a determination, to say, this is an unsafe product, you can't sell it. And they have done that occasionally, very rarely. And it is rare because Tesla is somewhat unique. If you look at other major established automakers, they don't tend to do things like this. You know, Ford and Toyota and Honda and General Motors, companies that have been building and selling cars for decades or over a century in some cases, over time have grown to be a little more wary about being too ahead of the law and regulation because they've been sued and they've been hit over the years. So they tend to be a little more cautious in such cases. Tesla shows a willingness to be a little more aggressive and to really push. So there's no specific regulation that prevents them from doing what they're doing right now in how they promote and sell FSD. And if there's nothing stopping it, why stop?
Could reports like yours or the YouTube influencers be enough for NHTSA? You kind of mentioned that they're not always proactive. Is that enough to cause a reactive piece of legislation?
I think over time, yeah, a lot of this work, and again, the group that we did this with, the Dawn Project, which is really one guy, Dan O'Dowd, who runs a software company in Santa Barbara, California. Dan is just funding this. And it's not just that they did this with Forbes. They're doing this with public officials. A few days before I was in it, apparently they'd had like a congressman from Santa Barbara. They've had California's Attorney General, Rob Bonta, do the exact same thing. And what they were saying was exactly what I was saying after it was done, which is a simple question: how is this legal? Because their experiences apparently were quite similar to mine, where things happened.
Makes you wonder how some people are having seamless trips, yet this one is consistently producing the same results. You have a quote from Dowd in your piece saying, a drug company wouldn't call something a universal full cancer cure when it didn't actually cure cancer. No one would do that.
Yeah.
You would be sued into the ground.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, is there any pending lawsuit against Tesla right now?
We're waiting to see the outcome, specifically in the case in California. California DMV has been reviewing this for years. And in the United States, the federal government sets national safety standards for things like cars. States can set certain guidelines for advertising rules, language, rules for automotive retail, basically. California's DMV does not have the authority to block Tesla from just offering the system. But the DMV, the judge has heard the case, and we're waiting to hear how she rules in this case. But the state of California is asking that Tesla be blocked from using the names autopilot and full self-driving. What Dan was talking about there is if a drug company said calling something a full cancer treatment, that sounds like great. Let's get rid of cancer. If you say full self-driving, wow, that sounds like it drives itself. But then when you say full self-driving parentheses supervised, you've sort of, that's like saying super genius, quote, not very smart. What do you make of that?
Super genius open book test.
Yeah.
I'm asking some of these lawsuit and legislation questions because in the background of all of this, we have Elon Musk's relationship with President Trump, which faced a bit of a rupture, that might be an understatement, in June, and yet appears to have maybe made a step towards reconciliation just this past weekend. Can you talk about what you're seeing between Tesla's chief executive and our president?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they were very tight for several months, and Musk was, the most generous donor to Trump's campaign, committing more than $200 million, I believe Forbes has reported. And for the first few months of his administration, they were very close. Musk was running Doge, and he seemed like co-president for up until sort of April or May, I guess. And then things took a turn, as they often do, with two high-powered, individuals, and they had a big falling out shortly after Musk left his role with Doge, and it soured pretty fast. He was tweeting about Trump being in the Epstein files and things like that, and then he sort of toned down a little bit. He briefly was talking about he was going to fund a new political party to go against Trump, presumably. That seems to have died. And then just recently at the Charlie Kirk event in Arizona, the two of them seemed friendly and seemed to be patching things up. And I think Musk has really jumped in online with comments supportive of Charlie Kirk and things that seemed probably were looked kindly upon by the Trump administration in terms of how he was talking about Kirk and what happened in that case. But that's a big deal if the two of them have patched things up for a couple of reasons. And it relates to this. Elon Musk has a lot of, both on Tesla side and SpaceX side, interests where the government is very important to those companies. In the case of Tesla, it's for regulatory stuff like full self-driving and what the rules are, what you can and can't do, what is permitted and what's not permitted. And if NHTSA decides maybe they won't set any hard regulations for driver assist technologies like FSD, then Tesla can proceed to do as it's doing currently and the way it promotes FSD. If the administration were angry with Musk, they could be a lot tougher. And NHTSA could just, the transportation department could have NHTSA shut down FSD and just say, you can't offer this. It's unclear yet what's actually going to happen. NHTSA remains an agency within the Department of Transportation that's largely staffed by career experts in transportation safety. So these aren't normal hand-picked staffers. These are people who have serious engineering backgrounds and scientific backgrounds and really understand this stuff and are, take very seriously public safety. Mm-hmm. That's why the agency exists. So it remains to be seen, but a friendly relationship once again between Trump and Musk could go a long way to perhaps put off any changes at NHTSA that might be negative for Tesla's business. And then, of course, there's SpaceX, which now does the bulk of U.S. government and NASA launches for satellites to astronauts going to the International Space Station. The federal government is also using a variation of Starlink for, military purposes. So SpaceX has become so critical to U.S. national security and to NASA. And so that's a very interesting situation where the government is highly reliant on Elon's company on one side, whereas Elon is highly reliant on how Tesla's treated on the other.
That's interesting. So what comes next? I know you don't have a crystal ball when it comes to the Musk-Trump relationship, but what will you be watching for, at least when it comes to that piece of the puzzle?
Well, this is one obvious thing that's out there. Elon Musk, was very generous to Donald Trump's presidential campaign, as we mentioned before, provided $200 million or more to get him reelected. The midterms are coming up. Certainly, if Elon Musk felt like it, he could flood the zone with money for, limitless money, perhaps, for at-risk members of the House. So, this whole issue of who's going to control the House after the 2026 midterms. Right now, it's been lots of different states like Texas and maybe California and Missouri and others, doing new districts to gerrymander to try to control the outcome. But the wild card could be Musk, if he were so inclined, and if he and Donald Trump are friendly, or if he wants to win the good graces of President Trump. Certainly, he could open, his wallet and just let the money flow to Republicans. So probably might be the single biggest factor to keep an eye on. That would be very, very impactful if that happens.
If that happens. And then on the full self-driving side of things, what comes next? It sounds like this Project Dawn is trying to get in front of as many people as possible, but are you going to do another test run, or what are the questions you'll be asking?
I think it'll be worth checking because yet another update of FSD is coming. It's coming soon, probably within a week or two. I think it was due this month, so I don't know if it's going to make that. But with each iteration, if you read Elon Musk's posts on X, he claims each one is going to be exponentially better. And he's been saying that for years. And there undoubtedly will be improvements. I don't question that. But will it be improved to the point where someone can safely relax, not have to pay attention, and take their hands off the wheel and not hover their feet over the brake pedal? I'm not optimistic that that's going to happen at this point. And the other thing I want to point out is one of the tests that the Dawn Project did 2 years ago, and they replicated for me, is a really important one. And this is a very simple test. There is a school bus parked by the side of the road. As you approach in a residential neighborhood, as you approach, the flashing red sign comes out from the side of the bus, says stop, because a yellow school bus with a flashing red sign, it's like, children are present. Children may be crossing the street. Stop. In the test this was first done 2 years ago by the Dawn Project, they showed me, we reran the test. There's nothing, it's very simple. Sign comes out, does the Tesla stop? It did not. And then they have a little mannequin named Timmy that pops out of the front of the bus. A guy pulls it across the street, a sled. The Tesla just mowed it down. We tried to see how does the Waymo do. And fortunately, because we're in Los Angeles and Waymo covers that part of LA, we summoned a Waymo, and about 10 minutes later, a Waymo came. And we did the same thing. We had the Waymo, it was driving down the street. School bus stop sign comes out, the Waymo stopped. And we just waited and waited and waited until the sign was retracted. So Timmy did not pop out again in the case of the Waymo because there was really no need at that point because the sign was down.
Oh, I see. So in the test, because the car didn't stop, the secondary test was the mannequin coming out.
Right. But the thing that I noticed immediately with the Waymo, beyond simply the school bus test, was the drive feel was so different. It felt night and day different. We did a very brief ride, basically a large circle, through a really tight, crowded neighborhood with essentially one-way streets with cars parked on both sides. So you really have to navigate carefully in the Silver Lake area. This is in the hills. I was shocked at how smooth the Waymo was. It was just flawless. I've been in Waymos on and off since 2016. And felt different iterations. I hadn't been in several months, actually. So this was by far like the most sophisticated ride feel as a rider. And this is what I'm hearing in my reporting on Waymo. When you talk to people who use it, they're just, they're so relaxed. Like the first time they use it, there might be some apprehension. But once you've ridden it, it's like, oh, this feels great. Waymo's not perfect. They've had some accidents as well. Nothing fatal, and in many of the incidents, it's often where another driver hit them. So they've been involved in some things. But occasionally some funny things will happen, and the company will tell you it's not perfect, and that's one reason why they're expanding, but they're trying to do this very carefully. Essentially what you see with Tesla, and especially like with what they're doing in Austin with the robotaxi pilot, they're charging people a nominal fee to ride in a test vehicle. That's really what it is. Waymo, Zoox, even Cruise, which is gone now from General Motors, they did their testing like that with employees. They did not have the general public do it. Tesla's made a different choice. Until they felt the system was safe enough to let people use, then they began charging people for it. So that is the difference. But in my reporting, I find Waymo to be far more sophisticated in what they've done. Their system feels much more like ready for real-world deployment. I haven't yet tried Baidu and some of the Chinese companies who also, from my reading and research, seem to be quite impressive as well. They're not here, unfortunately, so we can't really compare. Zoox will be the next major launch in the robotaxi space. They've launched in Vegas on a limited program there. So robotaxis are coming. But for me, personally, based on my reporting, based on the people I speak with, the experts I talk to, I'm not confident that Tesla is on a path in the near term that's going to make them a legitimate rival to Waymo. I just don't see it.
Which then invites the follow-up question, are you confident that Elon Musk will achieve that $1 trillion pay package?
Hard to say. He's got a decade.
And the clock only just started on that.
The clock just started. Well, it has to be approved. It hasn't been approved at the board, the shareholders meeting. I don't make a lot of predictions, but I will predict Elon's pay package will be approved overwhelmingly. Everything related that the board puts up is approved overwhelmingly at Tesla board meetings. So that will happen, and that's to happen in November, I believe, is the next annual meeting. But then the clock begins at that point, and 10 million FSD subscriptions and 1 million robotaxis on the road are both part of him getting the full value of the 1 trillion in total over that period. I couldn't begin right now to say whether that's going to happen. Over 10 years, could it happen? Maybe over 10 years. Is it going to happen in the near term, meaning in the next 2 or 3? No.
Maybe in 10 years I will try an autonomous vehicle, but based on everything you just said, even with the good review of Waymo, I think the only place I am truly relaxed is a train. But for everyone who wants to read Alan's story, go to Forbes.com. It is called Tesla's Full Self-Driving Software is a Mess. Should it be legal? Alan Owensman, thank you so much for coming in and talking about this, and thank you for testing this technology.
Good to be with you, Maggie.